Thank you. I'm sure that you know everyone in this room because you are the most connected person, I think, other than Chinmay. Anyone here, but for anyone that doesn't know, explain who you are and HotelNetwork, tell everyone what they do.
Well, I wish to know you all. Happy to do coffee afterwards, a drink. So my name is Mercedes Blanco. I work with the HotelNetwork, a company based out of Spain. And yes, I'm from Spain as well. This is where this accent is coming from, although I'm American. So I live in the States now. I've been there for the last 8 years of my life. And yeah, perhaps I've learned how to meet people from Chinmay.
Yeah, I think.
We used to work together when I was at Reagan as well.
Okay, so we're today talking more about e-commerce. I'm going to touch on some topics later on as well that we talked about from a personal perspective. But generally, during the pandemic, but also pre-pandemic, right, the whole world of e-commerce exploded, and particularly retail really changed everything. Yet, the last 2 days of listening to kind of talks and the same conversations that I hear at every one of these conventions are that we still have legacy payment issues. It's still the same situation happening. So why are hotels just not ready for an e-commerce boom, and why haven't they moved at the same pace as other industries?
Well, I think that there are a few things. First of all, I'll start saying that I was personally very disappointed with our industry back in 2020. I'm still am today, right? Because I believe that we missed our one chance of opportunity to do things right. Over the years, if you think about how we've built distribution or the whole hospitality ecosystem, we've been building layer over layer, solution on top of another solution just to fix things. But we've never gone through the very basics. And I think that is causing a lot of friction and a lot of frustration today. And I do believe that we have great technological players trying to change that, but it's very, very hard to change something that lives on legacy. So that's one. I think that it was obviously very hard to react to COVID. We didn't know, and we suffer the most. But I think that we should have been braver and do things and take things to a different level. Then the other thing is that age has a very important component in this industry. One, we are led by older generations. And two, we still think with that mentality. And we do not plan for what is coming. We treat things the same way that we treat them back in the 90s. And yet we were a very disruptive industry before, but nowadays we tend to forget that the way that I behave, the way that I consume, digitally or not, it is not the same way that my parents would or that my kids would in the future, right? And we tend to forget about that. We tend to behave like if the world wasn't evolving as fast as it is. And I think that that is causing a lot of problems as well. And last but not least, I think that we tend to believe that experiences only happen in person. And we sell the dream first online, or however we do it. And we can personalize that too. We can bring it to the next level, yet we haven't done it. We tend to rely on this, on human-to-human interaction. And yet I get that, I love that, but I think that we can transform and move that into e-commerce and do it the same way, but for some reason we are not. And I think it is because we are still stuck on all of those systems that are preventing us from moving forward.
So you think it's a finance issue? You would think it's an awareness or a skill set issue?
I think that is scale, and I think that is investment as well.
Yeah, okay. And it's interesting, I think a lot of companies, e-commerce over the past 10 years really, kind of started out just being an extension of marketing or an extension of revenue management, and it was kind of just put in the corner somewhere. Those guys look after the website, who cares what they do, right? They just need to make sure it looks pretty online. What needs to change in the mindset? Is it that we need to bring more people in from outside of the industry to break this mindset of not being willing to change the industry?
I would love that, but I also would love fresher blood. I think that we need to bring people that think differently. We've been talking also about the differences between millennials, Gen Z, and such, and they do indeed think differently. The way, I don't know about your experience hiring younger minds, right? But the way they think, the expectations that they have from our companies are not the same because they were educated in a different way. And I think they will allow us to change that. And if you think about the very basics of e-commerce itself, we are not even there yet. I mean, some companies, they don't even have a proper mobile responsive website. How can that be in today's world, right? If you are not giving them a user-friendly experience, a good design, a good mobile response, an easy checkout, we had a lot of steps in the process. Some companies, they don't even have the availability to show reviews on the website, and it's varied. And then you go to OTAs and TripAdvisor. No wonder why they consume there and not on the direct channel, right? Because we are missing on the basics. So if we are missing on the basics, how we can give them that customization that they want, right? If you think about the companies that are really succeeding these days, they are thinking ahead of your needs. My Amazon is telling me what I want, but my travel experience is not telling me where I want to go next.
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah. And I think that was touched on yesterday, and I think also on a couple of panels about attributes and how that could best be kind of positioned in the e-commerce journey. You think that's because we've been talking about it, I mean, I'm not that old, I kind of am now, but you kind of get to a stage where how many more times are we going to talk about attribute-based before we actually do something with it?
I wish I had the answer to that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But no, I hear you there. I mean, it's very hard, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think Mike, in his session yesterday, talked about this payment kind of friction. And it's the same. I didn't stand in line at the gate for my flight and then pay for my flight. And yet, we still seem to want to do that at a hotel. Even though you offer an advanced purchase scheme, we still insist on making the guests typically pay on arrival. And we have these huge issues at front desk. And then you end up with just annoying the customer before they've even arrived. And we talked about how long that check-in process is taking. What needs to happen to almost enforce the transaction to happen at time of purchase online? And how do we, is it a case of educating the guest, or is it we just need to remove the option to pay at property?
Well, first of all, it's very hard to take away something that is being given. And consumers perceive that they have the right of paying when they check in, right? So first of all, we have to change mentality. Second of all, we have to remember that only a third of the population feels yet confident paying online. So, and also, we need to also close the gap between the search and the actual payment. We need to make things simpler and easier for everyone to, one, build on that trust, and two, change that perception that we've given away. I think that we need to change the way we educate the travelers worldwide, and I think that it would be ideal if we could come up to an agreement, sort of, right, as an industry, to start changing that. If we cannot do it all together, it only takes one. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all followers, right? So basically, if we have one of the big ones, changing the game, and at the beginning, in order for you to take away, you have to give something in return. Humans, all of us, we need to perceive that we are winning somehow. So at the beginning, perhaps we should incentivize them with a discount, with a benefit. We were talking about loyalty before, right? I mean, if you give me free Wi-Fi these days, that's not a benefit. That's something that I have the right to have. I mean, we have Wi-Fi everywhere. And we were just talking about how come we are more loyal to airlines than we are to hoteliers. And I think it's because there are other added values, right? So perhaps payment-wise, we can provide with added values. Discounts or not, or something that is perceived as a win. And even the flexibility. The reason why e-commerce has changed so fast is because, one, their content is absolutely superb. We are the only ones that are selling something that is not physical, and yet we are not showing it the right way. We are losing our battle content-wise. We are not ahead of the game of video. We are not ahead of the game of virtual reality. E-commerce is. I'm a female, so I can try on makeup virtually. So perhaps we need to take someone there with the metaverse to see the experience, right? But going back to payments, basically what I'm trying to say is that the e-commerce world is giving them better content, better flexibility, and an easier experience. And we are basically losing the battle in those three things.
And so what do you think hotels need to do to there's always a distribution mix, right? And it's particularly from an OTA perspective, you need to balance out share, and it's not about whether hotels want direct, whatever it might be, but what do hotels need to do to compete in this space, particularly for a direct channel? Because you look at the marketing and spend of the big OTAs is huge, right? So what do hotels need to do to change their mindset? Typically, hotel sales and marketing spend maybe 5 or 6% of turnover on average. These big players are 30 or 40%. Is it a case of spending more, or is it a case of thinking smarter?
It is both. I think that budgets need to increase because we are still behaving with the same budgets that we had before, although the consumers are not behaving the same way. To me, it drives me nuts that you are basically investing the least in the channel that you control the most. And that goes for social media, website, anything that you fully control. It is like, if I am put it in a different words, would you trust your dating life to someone that is not yourself, right? I think that we need to take control and ownership of our channels, and really, those are the ones that are gonna put you out there. So to me, it is, yes, increasing the budget, and also doing things smarter. Because, like I said, there are a bunch of things that are still all technology-wise. And if you mentioned that our budgets on e-commerce is low, our budget, hospitality budget in technological development is even lower. That's only 2.5% of net revenue. And that is the US living. Europe is far behind. Yeah. So we are not investing in technology. We are not investing in e-commerce. And all of those two things together are not the future, are the present, are here to stay, really. And again, I mean, we are all getting older. The newer generations are coming, and we are not prepared to take care of them.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, I guess how would you position that to post-pandemic, huge price increases coming everywhere? So now hoteliers need to go to their owners and say, well, I know we're not making any money really, but we need to spend even more. What's the best way to position it?
Well, that's like sales. I mean, when you are struggling the most, that's when you need to invest the most in sales, because we are all here for the long term, not for short. And if we are a short-sighted industry, we won't survive. We always have to think long term, and we have to continue to evolve and adapt.
Yeah. And you think we didn't do that during COVID?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree, but I personally don't.
No, and I think you see this is not about digging at airlines, but you see where they made reductions in manpower during COVID, and then kind of you see the impact that has now on the traveller experience, right? I guess it's the same thing. As much as COVID was this awful, awful situation, it was only ever going to be a short term in the grand scale of things. And therefore, hotels or any industry that decided to invest during that time will see the benefits coming forward.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. At my current company, for instance, we specialize in conversion and personalization of the websites. Who was converting in hotels, booking something? Nobody. Instead of letting people go, we actually hire people, technological developers, to do what? To build a solution, data-driven solution, to establish some benchmarking and be ahead of the game when that came. As a result, during COVID, we grew 80%. So that tells a lot about where we are today.
Yeah. What about the future, potentially in a cookieless world, whether that ever kind of comes to fruition, or Web3 become a reality where everyone's details are then much more secured? How, from a marketing perspective, does the industry need to change its thought process that way?
Cookieless, absolutely yes. How? I don't know, because Google doesn't even know.
Yeah.
They keep delaying things because they don't yet know how they put themselves in that situation, and they don't know how to fix it. Really, that's the reality. We as a company, we've been building some solutions ourselves to try to be ahead of the game. That is happening because we have to protect privacy. Absolutely, yes. But I think that sometimes we love to talk about the future, blockchain, metaverse. Again, we don't have mobile responsive websites. Let's stop for a minute and do the basics right, and then we can dream and play all that we want.
What would you say, if you could say, were the top 3 things? If for hotel companies that are probably, or maybe not as savvy when it comes to e-commerce as others, if they're smaller organizations, what would be the top 3 things that you should say they should really start to track? If they could only track 3 things, what would they be?
consumer behavior. That's one, because we are absolutely obsessed with traditional targeting, but that's not going to matter anymore. I don't think that geographical targeting is going to matter. Cultural marketing is going to matter the most, because we live in an interconnected world. I'm a Spaniard living in the States. I'm sure that most of you live in different countries. So geography is no longer going to play a big role in the future. It's going to be all about behavior and culture. So start to track that. Quality over quantity. Okay. For instance, in social media, still today, most companies, they track followers. And that doesn't matter anymore. It's engagement, or in other terms, loyalty. So start to track your loyalty and the people that is really engaged with you and how they behave. That will put you ahead of the game. And the third thing is, to me, pricing fluctuation, how that impacts people's mentality, because to me it's really crucial, especially in today's world where corporate is not yet there, how people is reacting to all of those fluctuations in pricing. The other day with James, I saw you at the end here, we were talking about how short-term rental was impacting how hoteliers were pricing their inventory. And I think that all of that interconnection between how the travelers are changing and our industry is changing, pricing-wise, is also going to be very important. So price with demand, cultural or consumer behavior, and loyalty or engagement, those two things.
And with the price, what about personalized pricing? You think that will come to fruition? I know it happens quite a bit in gaming. Do you think it will follow through in hotels also?
I am happy personally. I mean, I would pay much more if that would mean more things aligned to who I am as a person. For instance, I didn't work out this morning, but I should have. I'll do it in the evening. But if you give me sport equipment that is aligned with the kind of activities that I do, I'll pay extra. And that is unique to who I am as a person. I think that we keep talking about customization, but we forget about what that looks like. We treat people in buckets, and instead of doing buckets, we have the means. I mean, the beauty about e-commerce is that you really get to know the person behind it. And yes, it can be anonymized, it can be safe, and we can establish all of the boundaries that you want, but you do have that data. The problem is that the data is super segmented, fragmented, and we are not able to aggregate everything together, and we are not making the right decisions because of that.
Okay. Moving just to some other topics that I wanted to talk about, and it always fascinates me when we talk and just catch up in general about you and kind of your goals and how you get to where you want to be. I read a really interesting stat, which was, it kind of flagged with something that you said. We had a pre-call, and something Mercedes said to me was really remnant about women in technology and women in empowerment, and why isn't there enough leaders in this industry. And there was a quote, which I think it was a McKinsey company, that they said, particularly women in the US tech sector are really, really low represented, particularly women of colour, and particularly how this kind of movement has really, it's such a male-dominated industry. And why do you think that is? And I know you're kind of working on various projects. I think, why does that happen, first of all? And what do we need to do as an industry to get better?
Well, unfortunately, it is not an industry thing, but it is true that it's very visible in our industry. It gives me hopes to think that right now, if you look at colleges, females, I believe that is a 6-to-1. So per every man, there are 6 women. In this industry in particularly, if I am correct, I think that almost 60% of the task force worldwide is female-dominated, but yet only 4% made it to the top. Why is that? Well, again, it has to be related with culture and how we've evolved as a society, right? As women, we haven't been in the workforce for that long, really, and we yet need to make it to the top. I am personally committed to that. I really have high hopes, but there are a lot of biases and a lot of problems that we have to fix. It is not only about the percentage of women at leadership roles, it's also salary gaps. Right now, I believe that women make 60% of what a man makes on the same position. And they are telling that it will take 135 years for us to close that gap. So that is absolutely huge, and it scares the death out of me. But I do believe that we have wonderful women in this industry and outside the industry. Same with men. We have wonderful men and women, but I think that it's about equalizing how we work and how we balance with our family responsibilities, and that we start empowering others as well. For every promotion we see, for every 100 promotion among the industry, it is only like 7 to 10 women versus men, and that absolutely stops when you reach VP level or C level, right? The promotions that we see them very, very equal at the lower levels, but the minute that we start going up, that changes. And I came to realize about that because during COVID, like many of you, I was on reactive mode. I was just working, right, and trying to survive. But after COVID ended, or in 2021, I started to reflect more about what is it that I wanted. And I did an executive program, and my executive coach asked me, okay, why don't you come out and try to find some women leaders in technology, which is my field, right? I could only find 2 or 3, and that blew up my mind, right? And that is why we co-founded Women in Travel Thrive, just to support women among the industry, really. And I believe that at this point, it is not about being female or male, color or not. It is about who's the right person for the job. That's all that matters. I'd rather hire someone that is the best than to fit on any specific condition. So I am not suggesting that we have to incentivize hiring more women just because they are female. No, not at all. We have to hire the best talent, but I do think that we have to overcome some biases in life.
And if, as a final closing point, if you could give one piece of advice to perhaps if you were in the same situation now at the age of 17, thinking about studying, what would be the advice you would give to young females in order to deliver where we would like them to get to? What would you say to them is one opportunity?
Honestly, same advice that I would give to a man, and that's the same advice that I would give to anybody. Don't believe on your fears, because fear is there to help us survive, but it's never there to help us succeed. And we tend to be our worst enemy. So just dream and dream big, because dreams are there to be achieved.
Perfect. Thank you. As always, a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.